Welcome to the reality show, day 56 of the war. Sorry. Yeah. We have two topics today. The second one will be Mehdi Hasan, who we brought up a couple days ago and has since been fired from MSNBC. If you're too left-wing for MSNBC, you're doing something special. But before that, we're going to talk about London canceling Hanukkah, which is, it's a dramatic title. And by the way, as Alejandro just pointed out to us, this was Havering Council in East London. Mark and I on the Daily Objective just talked about Newham Council trying to cancel me. They go after the Jews one at a time. Havering Council try to do it in one fell swoop. But then they, I guess, saw that we were about to talk about it today and changed their mind. So Havering Council is now fully supportive of Hanukkah celebrations. I should say, and this is not a surprise to anybody who's a regular viewer of the show or anybody on the panel, I don't want any council celebrating any holiday ever. But yeah, since it is something that they do, and this is a very interesting time to cancel just the one. This is not Havering Council adopting laissez-faire capitalism and saying, you know what, government should not be celebrating holidays. It was a specific holiday of a specific people that they didn't want celebrating. All right. So I'm joined today, as mentioned, by Alejandro, who gave us the breaking news about our what we thought was our breaking news. Mark Pellegrino, Jonathan Daon, Jonathan Honig, thank you all for joining me. Jonathan, I'm going to go to you first and see what your thoughts are. I don't know if Chicago City Council celebrates Hanukkah or any other holiday, but yeah.
It's such a disappointment. I mean, now it seems to me, as ARCUK has shown, as even many celebrities some celebrities have shown, it's a time for bravery. It's a time to stand up, even if it's something as simple as putting up a menorah, as you always had done. To give in even to the threat of perceived violence. It reminds me a lot of after you might remember Bosch Fawston, who is an objectivist. I know many years ago won a cartoon contest with a cartoon of, I believe, Muhammad, and it was this tremendous uproar, or even the Danish cartoons. And instead of showing the cartoons, people rushed to take them down, to basically acquiesce to the mystics and the terrorist demands. So, I mean, to me, even if I wasn't necessarily Jewish, I think now is the time to put up a menorah, if only to say, to those who would hurt, innocent law-abiding people, not on my watch, and I'm not going to sanction that. So I'm really disappointed that this is the move that they're taking.
Jonathan, you actually live in the Jewish state. I'm pretty sure nobody there is canceling Hanukkah, but everywhere else, it's already. They were in other countries. They're already there, or they're moving in that direction. Your thoughts on this from Israel?
Yeah. Hi. First, I don't speak for my employer. Now I remember to do it on the first sentence. Yes, this is not surprising. I don't think anyone here is surprised about that, although good for them for not canceling at the end. But what can you really expect, Razi, from a minute city council to do when your entire country, with your entire political leadership, is not taking any stance against the disgusting violence that we see against Jews around Europe, around their own country, inside their own cities? So what can you really expect from such a small player? I think what really needs to be said is the direction that Britain specifically is heading is very concerning. And the fact that your leader, Mr. What's his name, Sinuak, he is so nothing. And how can you really fight these thugs with a guy who is not looking them directly in the eyes and saying, you guys, you represent medieval, retarded civilization. This is what you represent. And we are Great Britain, the former Great British Empire. We brought amazing progress to the world, the Industrial Revolution, all of the amazing things that have been born in London. You are coming to our streets and you are bullying our citizens who have lived here for generations. Where is the leader in the UK who's really willing to say something which I think isn't even that controversial? So yes, it's very concerning, and Britain needs that kind of leader.
Yeah, and the scariest thing about Britain's leadership is actually that's it's not as bad as it could be. The opposition is even worse on this, and the opposition is falling apart because the leader of the opposition isn't bad enough on this. And yeah, by the way, apologies for Jonathan using the word retarded. We did ban the word retarded at some point. So unless you're talking about somebody actually retarded, like I think the prime minister, and yeah, actually, you know what? Yeah, you can say retarded. Alejandro. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, let me tell that I hate consuls. I think they're the worst aspects of the political landscape here in Britain. They don't help at anything. They're just like a kind of welfare useless thing, and they're quite expensive. But the thing that I wanted to emphasize is that this is a consequence of the state involving itself into issues that are in themselves religious, but also ideological. And one of the things that you can see is that the main factor or the main population in Havering is Christian, and the second factor is Muslim, but like a relatively minor minority, like 7% of total population, while Jewish population is about less than 1%. And if you think that, let's say that I have a different religion than those three, I believe in the spaghetti monster or whatever, why shouldn't I shouldn't be entitled to have that kind of religious ceremonies established for me? So what happens at the end is that the council decides on the matter on just population wise, and therefore you decide to prioritize maybe the Muslims over the Jewish or the Christians over the Muslims, and that's bad in itself. But then when you see that they are also cowering up, saying, "Oh, maybe this will spark some anti-Semitism, and we don't want any involvement or any circumstances that could entail that Muslims hurt Jewish people," that's even worse, because you're just saying we're losers and we don't want any trouble here. But and at the same time, we cannot handle people from becoming criminals or violent.
Yeah, by the way, if Havering Council wants to be really inclusive and celebrate everybody's ideas, and they want to celebrate Ayn Rand's birthday, they can do so by canceling themselves. Mark, we were talking on the Daily Objective about, you mentioned Oakland. In Oakland, they put out some statement supporting the Palestinians or whatever. This is
well, they put out a statement supporting the pro-Palestinian movement and the ceasefire, but then they wanted to qualify it with, but we don't like Hamas, and that sent the citizens of that fantastic city upon a hill afire, and they began to protest and to tell the world how little they know about what's going on over there in that region. But yeah, look, I agree with you, Razi. It's really not, and Alejandro too. I think this is really not the government's business to get involved in promoting religions, and they clearly set up conflicts. We've had this conflict in the United States for years and years with the manger scenes in public forums, and with depictions of Moses on courthouse walls. You know, people get really in a lather about that because you know, the government as the owner of common property sort of becomes the seat of a great deal of conflict as people try to, you know, jostle their way into dominating that space. So these kinds of issues are not foreign to us in America. But I also think, I also agree with Jonathan that since it's happening, the thing you cannot do is cow to threats of violence. It seems like everybody in local and national governments are bowing down to these bullies, to these spastic psychopaths who think they can use violence to get what they want. It's precisely at those times you need to shiv those people in the jaw. You need to let them know that they can't act that way in public without serious repercussions. So I would put it up in defiance of them, as Bosch did. And he was told not to draw the image of Muhammad. He drew it. And of course, 2 men came to Ferguson, Texas to try to murder him for it. But that's the way you have to stand up to these people.
Can I just jump in with one other point? I mean, it always reminds me of that story, and I wish it was more widely disseminated, of, Ayn Rand and her fact of being born Jewish, right? I mean, somebody might know this, or maybe in the chat better than I do, but Ayn Rand never talked about having been born Jewish, except when she was in the presence of anti-Semitism. And then she would say, I'm Jewish. And there's a famous story of her and Isabel Patterson about that, though, as well. So, I mean, I think there's a great example of Ayn Rand's life, I think, about speaking up when appropriate. And in my opinion, now is certainly one of those times.
Yes.
Yeah, and in the statement, with the original statement when they were canceling Hanukkah, they made a point about saying, "Hey, look, this isn't anti-Semitism." It's part of the statement. It reminds me of a few years ago. I can't remember if this was right before Corbyn lost the election. I think it was before he lost the election in 2019, when it was Hanukkah, and he, expressed. He congratulated the Jewish people or whatever it was, and then in the same statement he said something about the suffering of the Palestinians. And I was thinking, why exactly in this statement is this something you thought is important to bring up? Why? What was it that kind of that made the two connect in your mind? Jonathan, any clue what that might have been in Jeremy Corbyn's mind, or why Havering Council made a point of saying, but we're totally not anti-Semitic here?
I would assume there's something to do with multiculturalism, and that they want to nobody even to mistake them for thinking that one type of culture is superior to another. So they have to apologize for mentioning something about Jewish culture whenever they do mention it in a positive way. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, Razi, sorry to interrupt, but everybody's got to live with themselves. Everybody has to see themselves as a moral agent. And if you're an anti-Semite, you're a racist. You're a form of racist, which we know is the lowest scum on the face of the earth. You can't see yourself as the lowest scum on the face of the earth. You have to see yourself as morally righteous. So now they're anti-Zionist, and so they project different images now to pretend like they're waving the banner of righteousness, but it's just a pose. It's just a pose.
And can I quickly just throw out a point that has struck with me the whole week since I saw the image of what unbelievable bravery looks like, is that young woman who is a hostage being released from Gaza, and looking Hamas, these guys all wrapped up in their keffiyeh and all that, right in the face, and walking out with complete dignity and strength and power. I mean, this woman stands up truly in the face of evil, and yet you have, no offense, but probably small, no-name, villages in England who are afraid to put a menorah. And I've just been so impressed with the bravery of so many of these people this week. I mean, beyond heroic and inspiring in every ways, and not to want to stand with them, to want to make excuses for the evil which befell them. Maybe, I don't know, Jonathan, maybe, as you said, it's only multiculturalism that can explain it.
Yeah, and again, like I think when we talk about the hostages being released and so on, and we talk about how this is in the context, the deal, which I think we would all have not made that deal with Hamas to release the hostages, but I certainly understand that it comes from a misapplication of a real, genuine value for life. Like, in Israel, they value life, and the Palestinians don't. They value death. This is why they want terrorists released.
Can I say as point to concretize that? I've seen it live. There was just in my city, Givatayim, a lady was kidnapped in Gaza, a young woman. She just got released as a part of the deal. And the city, you can see on the street of her house, there was about, I would say, 100 people, her friends, her family, waiting for her to come home. They were all cheering with Israeli flags. They were all waiting for her to come home. And you can see it was really a moving sight, this celebration of life, celebration of a human being whose life just been saved. And from the other side, you can see in Gaza or also in Judea and Samaria, how they accept their terrorists coming back, or how the mothers of the Hamas terrorists react when they tell them that they just killed 10 Jewish babies. And then you have Jeremy Corbyn mentioning, making this equivalency is insane. It's just insane.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should say that phone call where the terrorist was telling his parents, "Look, I just killed 10 Jews," and they're happy about it and so on. Owen Jones doesn't believe that's necessarily verified. So
he also refuted the Palestinians talking to each other about the Islamic Jihad missile that landed near the hospital, and he said the syntax and pronunciation, according to someone he knows, refutes that they are Palestinians talking about it. So everything's the IDF's fault. Everything is the IDF's fault.
Yeah, Owen Jones knows a lot of people, and it's interesting. All of them seem to verify everything Hamas says, and question anything Israel says, including things he himself saw in videos. Jonathan,
I'll just quickly throw it. I'm going to go back to what Ms. Rand said with Phil Donahue in the, what was that? I'm sure you guys know, 1978, 1979 interview, when she contrasts the Arabs, which she referred to them at the time as the Arabs. This is also in the book Ayn Rand Answers, I believe. Read and listen to what Ms. Rand said about contrasting the Israeli population. I'm summarizing her words now, but bringing technology, reason to the Middle East, and the Palestinians and the Arabs and all that has come along. And what you'll find, in my opinion, is that nothing has changed in 40 years. Israel, because of who it is, I believe fundamentally the ideas behind it has continued to flourish. And the alternative, well, we saw that on October 7th. Barbarism that gets almost worse and worse with each passing year.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's something close to in any fight between civilized people and savages, you support the civilized people, no matter who they are. Alejandro, on this channel, we've had disagreements pre-October 7th about whether calling the Palestinians savages is going too far.
I think I don't have a lot of thoughts over there. I think in a sense they aren't, mainly because when you talk about savages, you think about people like the ones living in the Amazon, and the thing that they have, the characteristic that they have, is that they don't know a lot, and they haven't been exposed to civilization. And I think the difference with the most brutal people in Palestine is that they do, and they reject it. And I don't think that's I wouldn't call that a savage. I think that in a sense that's worse. Now, can I just say one thing?
Good point.
Yeah, very good point.
I wanted to say something related to something. We're objectivists, and sometimes we are criticized because we say ASA or A or non-A, and that's too abstract. This has nothing in relation with reality. And I do think that there is a relationship with reality in regards to the way in which people have reacted. And I mean, Havering Council, but also Wembley. I don't know if you talked about this, Razi, but Wembley is the most famous stadium in the UK, and basically has an arch, and the arch has been used to proselytize certain kind of things. And after October 7th, they suggested that they should paint it with the flag of Israel, and they denied it because it was too controversial. But at the same time, they are always all the time trying to signal and suggest courage and being really moralistic. But it's always with topics which nobody will tell them, oh no, that's not courage, or that's something very controversial. But what courage means is to stand up to things which will maybe cost you morally or personally, but you stick to them because they are right. And yet, with the most controversial stuff, but the things which I think they are right, they won't do anything at all. So in a sense, they want the goods that come with courage, while at the same time they don't have courage, A and non-A at the same time. And that's a real deep contradiction, and that's really wrong from their behalf, and they should be called because of that.
Yeah, I want to make a quick point about the Wembley thing. I just want to thank Johnny Ruiz and Catherine Castillo for their generous super chats. Catherine says, I stand with Israel, and shares an Israeli flag emoji. Yes, this is one of those places where you can do that on this channel without, getting attacked, which is good. Yeah, so this was during an England game, right? That they wanted to basically show the colors of the Israeli flag.
Yes.
Right after the terrorist attack, which is interesting. You know, the England national team, when the whole kneeling thing started, and you know they were kneeling at the beginning of every game, standing up to whatever racism that they see in Western society. And I remember before the World Cup in Qatar, they were gonna wear like these bands of the LGBTQ flag in Qatar, because in Qatar you can't be gay legally, and so they were gonna wear that, and then they were told they'd be fined, so they didn't, but they kept kneeling. So they went to a brutal dictatorship where being gay is a crime. We're gonna stand up for that, but instead went there and made a statement about racism in the West. So that is the level of bravery that we see from England's football players. I'm very glad they ended up not winning that World Cup. And yeah.
What frauds, man. It's such a joke.
Can I throw in quickly an example that I know we don't want to go, we have time for another topic, but one of the reasons we always talk about Ayn Rand or Dr. Brooke has talked about government as a necessary good, why you need a monopoly over violence, is that sometimes it's required. And, Razi, you might remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was uprising in the Middle East and Palestine, and at least here in Chicago in the US, there were groups of Palestinian supporters basically doing these caravans, donuts with their SUVs and stuff, with the Palestinian flag. The long story short is, I've told this story on the channel before, I gave a couple of them, I believe you call it the fucking 4-finger salute, thinking, all right, well, it's the middle of the day, I'm by a Starbucks, what's going to happen? Well, you know what? They parked, they came, and they beat me up in the middle of the day in front of, in the middle of the street. So what? I have to say, I'm a little fearful now sometimes of speaking out, and I don't go to any more protests because these people will use violence, and that's why I need government to protect me, to do it in my stead. So I'll throw that. Maybe that's a topic for another show. But Mark, I've told this story before. Yeah, no, I got my ass whooped by 4 or 5, believe Palestinian supporters, I suppose, because I was on the phone with a tenant of mine at a property, and they were doing donuts in the middle of the street, honking their horns. So I'm fearful of the violence that they employ, and that's why we need government to step in and be brave in these examples, in my opinion.
By the way, Jonathan, I'll just translate Mark's facial reaction. He wants to come to Chicago and find these people with you right now.
You find them, and I think what we've discovered in the last couple of weeks is that there's thousands and thousands and thousands more. who are willing to
Yeah.
use violence at
It's
the
like-
drop of the hat. I mean, can you imagine getting the finger and going and physically beating someone up? The finger in Jersey is kind of like it's like a handshake, isn't it?
It's the national anthem.
That's what I'm
It's their
saying. I
state-
thought it was pretty
it's their-
benign, the finger.
It's their state bird.
So these people are willing to use violence. So, I don't believe in God, but God bless the IDF and any other government who's willing to stand up and protect the rest of us.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, fighting people like that is like kicking an anthill. They just all come out. The hordes of them come out and attack you. You're not just fighting one or maybe even two people. It's 6 or 7. And I'm glad you came through that fairly unscathed, because those kinds of scenarios where they're attacking you in numbers like that, you could really get seriously hurt. Because there's nothing to stop their rage.
I mean, look, I'm not making any comparison, but the thought of 5 people attacking one guy who was 20 years their senior on the phone, and probably, it's not so dissimilar philosophically to the idea of these militants attacking totally innocent concert goers who are just there partying, truly innocent non-combatants, non-militaristic, non-violent. So again, no comparison whatsoever, but you're dealing with some real evil here.
Yeah, Jonathan, this kind of ties in a way to what we talked about last time you were on the show, which was the title was what is the most dangerous country in the world for Jews? And of course, the title was, a way for me to say it's Israel, but again, it's Israel in a context, because I think Israel is surrounded by enemies that want to kill everybody there, and Israel refuses to fight. In other ways, yeah, expressing support. I would not wear a t-shirt with an Israeli flag walking through the streets of London today. I would be afraid to do that. I know Mark would disapprove of what I just said, but Jonathan, we'll go to you, and then yeah.
No. I appreciate what you said. You would be hoarded. No matter how good a fighter you are, you can't fight 5-6 people coming at you at once. You're in trouble.
Yeah, and he shouldn't be a martyr. We're not like them. They want to be martyrs, and we should let them be martyrs, by the way. But yeah, Israel is at the forefront of this battle, and they are at the gates, or as what you described in Chicago and in London and everywhere. And this is so crucial that Israel will beat the hell out of them in Gaza, so that they will not be emboldened. And the fact that the governments all over the world are calling for Israel to cease fire, we need to calm down things, it only emboldens them. It only shows them that their protest, their violence is working, and their pressure is working, and it's going to make the war last for longer. It's going to cause for more Israeli soldiers' deaths and more civilians' deaths, and more sacrifice. And by the end of the day, I don't really have any optimistic vision for how this will end in Israel. And if Israel will go down, the rest of the West is just, it's a matter of time, because once they're finished with us, they will come for you, Razi, in London. They will come for you, Mark. Where are you, in LA? They'll come from you all over the world. So yeah, it's very, very sad.
Before we go on to the next topic, Alejandro, actually, we haven't spoken about this, but we both live in London. I think you are out and about in London more than I am. I was on the tube today, and that was a great reminder of why I don't take the tube normally. How much of this have you seen? In the sense of actually, before you answer, let me say that I mentioned on this show or on the Daily Objective that our friend Matthew Humphreys had twice on one day in the early days of the war had people shouting at him because he looked Jewish, because he has a beard and he wore a fedora, and he's nicely dressed. People shouted at him, "Free Palestine." And apparently that happened again yesterday or the day before. So yeah, that is anti-Semitism, even though it's not targeted at a Jew. So I don't know to what extent you've seen any activity that is on this topic on the anti-Israel side?
Well, in a sense, thank God, not that much. I've seen restaurants pulling the PLO flag in their stands, and I say, okay, I know we're not to eat, but aside of that, I think the thing that has depressed me the most is seeing people that seem normal on the surface, and then they publish some stuff in Facebook, on Instagram, that they're like simply disgusting, or nudging conspiracy fantasies or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, how on earth this guy looks so normal and then says such an idiotic kind of things. Um, Aside of that, I haven't seen a lot. Thank God. I know that it's there. I've seen other kind of bigotry, but in London, but that kind of I haven't.
Well, one pro-Palestinian who we used to see in London and haven't recently, but unfortunately might again, is Mehdi Hasan. Mehdi Hasan was fired from MSNBC, and there's good and bad in that story. The good is that Americans who want to enjoy a nice evening of watching MSNBC on prime time won't be subjected to him anymore. The bad is our audience will be for the next 30 minutes or so, because he is the topic of conversation, and he was. I brought him up kind of unintentionally during our show a couple of days ago, and I'm gonna repeat my strongest memory of Mehdi Hasan, which was on the BBC's Question Time, a show that is a major panel show on Thursdays here in the UK. He was on it right after the terrorist attack against the offices of Charlie Hebdo in Paris. And the first thing he said was, just because it's not illegal to fart in an elevator, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Basically, he was, which however you look at it, is a way of saying, look, yeah, maybe they shouldn't have been killed, but they also shouldn't have published those cartoons. So Mehdi Hasan, and again, that's my memory of him, because I was thinking, okay, even on Question Time, which is generally bad, right after this terrorist attack, you're gonna hear some semi-decent views, and this was the first thing he said. And again, if you go through his stuff, he has said worse in his career, and yeah. He is now gone from MSNBC. Why? I don't know. Let's go to the Americans first on this, so you guys can tell us. Jonathan, you are a television personality.
Mark knows entertainment. Please start with Mark. He knows.
Well, the reason I'm going to you first of all, because Mark told me that he's not too familiar with Mehdi Hasan, and second is because you're a news personality on television, and MSNBC now has a slot to fill, and perhaps the Mehdi Hasan show will be replaced with the Jonathan Hoenig show.
If they want to be radical, they would consider objectivism. I mean, in my opinion, what Mehdi Hasan, the little I saw of it, was kind of the same old tired, progressive, in this case, very pro-Palestinian line. The irony is, I don't know if I'm speaking necessarily for Mark, but probably many Americans, when I didn't even know that Mehdi Hasan had a career in London before this. I mean, he was almost like Martin Bashir or Omid Scroby or even Piers Morgan, names that I guess I always thought were kind of just token hires, like to hire them because they had an English accent, kind of looked good on American television. So, Mehdi Hasan was not a known property to me, just known for having these very sympathetic views to Palestine, and I believe really anti-Israel ultimately. But in my opinion, Razi, what this is Comcast, the owner of MSNBC, basically looking after their bottom line, realizing that this isn't selling. This isn't, as they say, playing in Peoria, to have these extraordinarily extremist, in my opinion, in a bad way, anti-Israel views. So look, as a business, they're positioning themselves for the upcoming election season, and be finding the fact that look, for better or worse, Mehdi Hasan is a target in that type of anti-Israel line, at least on some major cable channels in the US, is still a target. So I'm glad to see that he's gone. And I'd love to see Dr. Brook replace him. I'd love to see ARCUK replace him. MSNBC, if you want to go really radical, get an objectivist in there and blow your audience away.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, one of the most important roles in any major sports team is the scout. They have to go find players where nobody else would have thought to find them. And yeah, I think American news organizations come to London and find the Mehdi Hassans of the world that you've never heard of, and then make them stars, or the Piers Morgans, and make them stars in the US, although that didn't really work actually with Piers Morgan. And it looks to not have worked with Mehdi Hasan. So yeah, scouts, watch ARCUK. You know, I'd like this show to stay on our channel, but if MSNBC makes me a good offer, the reality show can follow Rachel Maddow every weeknight. Mark.
I mean, it blows my mind that he was able to stay on as long as he was able to. So, I mean, these views aren't selling, but the networks back them because of their ideologies. Until it becomes untenable, right? Until they say something so absolutely egregious that they can't ignore it anymore. Yeah, will MSNBC learn its lesson and put somebody on there with a truly alternative point of view? I doubt it. Ideology is more important than truth for them, and it's more important than truth seeking for them. So I don't expect to find any more interesting, better equipped talent than that jerk off. I can only hope that somebody, that he doesn't find a landing place anywhere, and that where he does land, it's hard and the rocks are sharp.
Well, can I just quickly jump in? I mean, one of the things that always, as a student of objectivism, has intrigued me is that oftentimes Miss Rand's philosophy kind of veers in a direction that sometimes when you're just getting into it, you wouldn't expect. So if I was a TV programmer, I guess I'd say this is ratings gold, because objectivism is generally interesting. It's generally, we're all probably been studying this, for 100 years between all of us, and we're still interested in it. So, too often people say, oh, Ayn Rand, I know what that is, greed, capitalism, XYZ. And if people would take the time, understand some of her ideas, there's not only such gold there, but there's such an unusual, unique perspective that if it got there, it would be.
Hey, I used to listen to talk radio all the time. When Leonard Peikoff had a show, it was my favorite show, and I could see why it was growing as quickly as it did. It was a little too much work for him to put a philosophical show together every day and spend all that time in preparation, and that's understandable. He blew all the other talk shows away. But when you get guys like Yaron Brook or Leonard even coming on Bill O'Reilly, big famous shows, or Yaron going on Tucker Carlson, these people are interested only insofar as it advances whatever conservative agenda they have. Once it starts getting into the the unfamiliar territory for them, which for us is the most important and most interesting, they no longer have a voice there, right? Both were cut off eventually from the mainstream.
O'Reilly was on, Dr. Peikoff was on with O'Reilly, and Dr. Peikoff's like, blow Iran to oblivion, and O'Reilly's like, whoa, slow down, doctor, you sound like a lunatic. So
yeah.
I mean,
it just is crazy that, well, now we're revisiting this 30 years later, and exactly what Leonard said was happening is happening, and we knew as objectivists that we were kicking this can down the road, and it was going to be something we were going to have to confront at one time or another. So as usual, we are the Cassandras in the room, right? We are the prophets who are never acknowledged. They don't believe what we're saying is going to come to pass, and yet it does. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's ratings gold. I mean, I think that's amazing. When I hear an objectivist, when I would watch you on Fox, Jonathan, before I knew who you were, I was like, this guy is amazing. He's the only person with a brain in this group of really eminent commentators and pundits. You were kicking ass. I'm like, this guy's got to have his own show. Who is this guy? And then I found, then I discovered you, in the Objectivist Network. But you blew my mind. Objectivists blow my mind whenever they go up there against what constitutes the intellectual establishment. They kill them every time.
Yeah, and by the way, I have a similar Jonathan experience. I didn't know about his connection to objectivism. I would watch him on Fox News, and he was just so much better than everybody else that at some point I looked him up, found his website, saw an Ayn Rand quote, and said, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
Jonathan, it was a thing of beauty. I don't know if I ever told you that, but listening to you talk, you integrated really complex principles, a really complex minutia into principles that anybody could grasp. It was really it was a lesson in the proper way to frame ideas.
Thank you, Margaret. Is this an opportunity? I mean, in the US, we had in the 1970s and early 80s, Milton Friedman, I believe, had a show on PBS that introduced, I think inspired by Ayn Rand and influenced by Ayn Rand, a lot of free market ideas to the general population. I mean, maybe now, given the fact that politics, at least in the US, is such a fucking cesspool, maybe now is an opportunity for objectivism to take a stand and start to cut into this just morass of collectivism everywhere you look.
yeah, and if I can just wrap up the Jonathan Honig Love Fest with a message in the regular chat, which is it's not a super chat, but until we're on MSNBC, we will allow this from time to time. Yeah, Christopher Smith suggests morning latte with Jonathan. The problem with that, there are a couple of problems. First of all, you don't know how early this guy wakes up. Nobody's going to watch it at that time. We need him on prime time. Also, if you just noticed, he drops an F-bomb here and there, which I believe in MSNBC, you can't do that. Jonathan, if Jonathan doesn't take it, your name is basically the same name. People might not tell the difference.
Well, mine is the original, but yes. Well, I don't think I have many sophisticated things to say about it, but I do think that legacy media is dead, and what people like Tucker, unfortunately, has showed us that you can get much bigger on a platform like X than on a legacy media channel. So I think we don't need them. And I think if we get more funding to do proper advertisement and I don't know, get PR people and everything, we can be much bigger on social media than boring news channels.
More funding sounds great. And by the way to help us do that is to become a member. There is a link in the chat. And of course, you can send us super chats. And help us stand up to and offer a real alternative to whatever is left of MSNBC, which even without Mehdi Hasan is still very bad. Alejandro, are you ready for prime time?
No. No, I think I could make a better talk show than all of you guys here. My basic point of this guy getting sacked was this because of demand issue, or was it rather that he triggered some of the executives and they said this guy should be out? Because my impression from what I read is that he wasn't very good at ratings. Probably it was his mom and his cat watching him, and that's it. I'm not sure. Do you know, Razi?
His mom.
I don't. I can tell you it wasn't me watching him, and because I've seen enough. Mark, you were saying something, and I think
no, I was just laughing. His mom and his cat were his only audience.
Well, look, it wasn't burning up the charts. It wasn't getting huge buzz, and I think that's the irony. Is we all probably, as students of objectivism, as prognosticators of advocates of objective, we all get the Ayn Rand hate. And what's so funny is none of it's new. We've heard it before. Ayn Rand took Social Security. She's such a greedy SOB. And if people would actually stop and take the opportunity to learn some of Ayn Rand's ideas, just a little few, and that's why I have to just say, I think supporting what we're doing here at the Ayn Rand Center is important. We're the entree for so many people just picking up Ayn Rand for the first time. And you see how applicable these ideas are to all elements of life, from aesthetics to politics, which most people follow, to life and death, which is what, Jonathan is dealing with every day now. Ideas matter.
So I have to say, like, I don't watch MSNBC almost ever. Even like recently, I've been spending significant amount of time in the U.S. and when I'm in a hotel room, I will turn on the TV, but I do opt for South Park over Rachel Maddow, although I see the similarities. What is what's left after Mehdi Hasan? Like, what is there anything that actually I don't know if you guys watch MSNBC, but you probably know what's on, and is that going to be in the landscape of news, 24-hour news channels? Is Are we looking at improvements there? This is for Jonathan or Mark.
Well, I mean, I'll quickly just jump in. I mean, look, Rachel Maddow is a top 10 rated host, my understanding. I mean, she gets a lot of viewers. And you know what? She's knowledgeable. She's well-spoken. And I think she understands how to communicate ideas. I mean, she often speaks in moral terms, which is so many, at least on the free market side, don't. They always talk about, look at this graph. If you do this, people will be more wealthy than them. And Rachel Maddow is speaking in moral terms. And I think, again, that's what objectivism fits this such a unique niche that we don't advocate for free markets because you make more money. We advocate for free markets because it's right, it's moral, it's good. And I think if you had that understanding, that's what's really missing. Not a practical advocacy for capitalism, free markets, but a moral advocacy. Only Ayn Rand promotes that. So, Rachel Maddow is good. AOC, I know Dr. Brooke gets a lot of shit for saying AOC is talented. She is. She speaks in moral terms. She's certainly educated on some level. And, those of us in the free market movement, now is, I think, our time. And I don't know whether it's Mehdi's demise or just our opportunity. As Alejandro said, legacy media is dead. Let's grow with our audience and make Ayn Rand's ideas go viral.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree on AOC. She never, there are people on the left who are definitely super intelligent. She never struck me as that intelligent. I don't know.
Yeah, but I have to agree with Jonathan. She's very talented at using social media. She comes at everything from a moral perspective. That's exactly what capitalists need to do. I think Rand was right, and objectivists are right in general, that we have lost the argument for the free market by claiming it's not good, but it's practical. I mean, that's how the conservatives have lost the argument, and why they're no longer defenders of capitalism or capable of defending it. Objectivists are capable of defending it because we understand it's a system based on rights and liberty, meaning no force, and that is a good thing for people, and that we promote it as a good, not just as a practical thing, but as a good thing. That's why those folks are winning. That's why the Rachel Maddows have the audience that they do. People want to hear things put in moral terms.
Jonathan, I follow Israeli media, and I have mixed feelings about how Israeli media became patriotic on October 7th. I mean, look, it's better than not being patriotic on October 7th. But it would be nice if some of them had at least a mea culpa, because the ideas they pushed for helped that happen. And in Israel, there have been cancellations of people, for taking the other side to this, which I think is the right thing to do. It is good to cancel people if they are, horrible. And in Israel, it's mostly, at least from what I'm following, is mostly football players, and mostly in Maccabi Haifa, which I know you support, but I'm okay with their players being canceled. But for actually, making statements kind of in support of the Palestinians, or not holding a sign of saying bring them home now, basically. This was a thing that some players wouldn't do. Yeah, so your thoughts on how it looks from Israel, and what's the equivalent in Israel?
So in Israel, yeah, you're right. The media has definitely changed dramatically, I would say. And I get to watch a lot of news because It's just on there all the time wherever I'm at. It's just on, and it's 24/7. They keep talking about it. So yeah, in Israel, you get to see, they show a lot of what's being said on BBC, for example, and they had people from Israeli TV being interviewed on CNN. For example, the lead presenter in Channel 12 of Israel, she had a very interesting interview at CNN where she was very critical of them and the way media in the West has been, their narrative, the way they have described what is going on in Israel. So I do see that as a positive, and everybody, I would say, essentially, most of the people are saying in Israel, yes, the media, from all sides, the media is disgusting, the way they are handling it. And also they're talking about women's rights organizations, which they didn't used to talk about these things. Their hypocrisy, they're talking about, what's going on X, on Twitter, all the fake news. And there's really seems to be sort of a rallying and also helping arm every the normal Israeli on the street, to arm him with what to say and what we should do when you say these fake news. They're talking about the community notes, for example, on Israeli TV. It becomes, and this, I think it becomes a bit propaganda by this point. And you have these ads that we need to support agriculture. The whole thing about the agriculture, Razi, which I think is really bad. But yeah, there's definitely a shift in Israeli media and an awakening among the people who are the people who have been, for example, there's a correspondent who has been going to Gaza, and he's been going to the West Bank to interview people. And the guy, he spent 20 years of his career, 30 years, and he was a leftist. But now he realized that these people are crazy, and there's no peace with them. So he's saying Israel needs to destroy Hamas. And this guy last year, you would never hear him say something like that.
Yeah, the mental gymnastics of the Owen Joneses of the world are easier to engage in from afar than they are when you're right there where it happens. Alejandro, I've said I would try not to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, since you are the Spanish speaker on the panel, and in some countries in Latin America are cut ties with Israel. They're very hostile to Israel. How do you compare what we said about media in Israel, what we see in the media in the US, the cancellation of Mehdi Hasan, to media, to whatever extent you follow it in Latin America?
I followed more the Spaniard media lately. I haven't followed Latin American media specifically for this issue, so I wouldn't be able to tell you a lot. I know that there is a general lack of trust from Latin Americans to Israel. That's, I would say, it's basically because of the Catholic nature of the country, and there's a lot of prejudice against Jewish people. But in the media of Spain, I've seen it. I think it's way much worse than the one than the English-speaking media. At least they try to be a bit more pro-Israel or pro both sides. In Spain, there's no such thing as being as trying to portray the Israeli side. So you get like the equivalent would be like getting the leftist side of the BBC. That's the impression I have. Not much more.
Thank you again, Johnny Ruiz, for the second generous super chat. Johnny says, great show today. Let's go prime time. Yeah, look, I agree with Jonathan, that the old media is on its way out, but it's not yet out. They are, better funded. They're certainly, better distributed. And yeah, look, MSNBC, I know you now have a slot to fill. You wanna be radical, as Jonathan said. Look, yeah, call me. We're not gonna be cheap, but we're not gonna be as expensive as Mehdi Hasan, and we will definitely be better and more interesting. Any final thoughts on anything we talked about today, Mark?
No. I think I covered pretty much everything that I have to say on these matters.
Jonathan.
Yes, I think we need more super chats if we want to beat legacy media. So do that. And what else is there to do? Go and enjoy life. There's only so much we can do by speaking here.
Super chats and memberships. That link is in the live chat, and yeah, that always helps. Jonathan, any parting thoughts?
I mean, makes me think of Miss Rand's quote: "There's two sides to every issue. One side is right, the other is wrong, and the middle is always evil." So if now is the time to take a side, take Israel's side. They're the victims in this conflict. And even speaking up a little bit in your own group, in my opinion, you don't have to go to, you have to go to bat. You don't have to get a, but to say, as many in our chat and others have, I support Israel, or I'm against Hamas. I'm for reason. I'm for capitalism. Now is the time to speak up and be an advocate for reality. And if you can't do it, let us do it for you, as Jonathan said, by supporting the Ayn Rand Center UK. And thank you to those who have.
Hey, wait, Razi, I do have one thing to add. I'm going to be releasing a reality check on Israel in the next 3 days. So stay tuned for that. It's coming out.
Yes. Subscribe to Mark's channel. There might be a link in the description if Daniel can find it before we go off the air. If not, you can find it easily. Oh, there already is. Great. And Alejandro, any parting thoughts from you?
No, thank you.
Well, then thanks everybody for joining me. The Briefly Objective, another channel everybody should be subscribed to. There is a new video in a few minutes. It is of Robert Nasser talking about the Pope's support for Hamas. So if you think we're talking about one religion that is a particular threat to all of us right now, but no religion is actually rational, and once you go down that road, you're not going to end up somewhere good. So yeah, choose reality and choose reason over religion, and choose to subscribe to this channel and the Briefly Objective and Mark's channel. Actually, Jonathan, you have a channel, and Jonathan, you have a channel. Subscribe to all of them, and Alejandro will convince him to start a YouTube channel as well. Thanks, everybody. The reality show is back on Monday. The Daily Objective is back tomorrow at its usual time. Yes, as we are now doing the Daily Objective 7 days a week. Most weeks, sometimes we miss a day, but yeah, when we have the Mehdi Hasan money, we will not miss a day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace.